I walk away, think of my hatred of you, glass case though it is. This is where they keep the arrows, bone, flint, ironed, tipped, each succession sharper. Time-lapsed life can still surprise you. A man leaves the house one morning, stumbles on an ichthyosaur fossil, stone-pressed, full of teeth. Is there some rendering of this where you don't loom, extinct? Some visitation when my reflection doesn't catch in the elevator cage and I don't feel particularly sick of you. Let me duck into the pocket dark, the tomb-like gem collection where the quiet rocks remind me eons of fiascos end in splendor. For the geologic record, let me tell you, once you go, you're gone. There's no more time, no room. What's left selects its own survival. The next poem I'm going to read is called Diagnostic Echocardiogram. In a darkened room in pediatric cardiology, our son lays atop a papered table, chest bare, quiet, lets the cold wand of a machine call sound waves through his body. He holds still the way we've practiced butcher paper, crayon outline, while monitors throw lights across the walls, blank, save for the wallpapered parade of pastel dinosaurs, stickers sick children stick haphazardly, small nicks in the pale green plaster, maybe kicks. In the children's hospital, such are the many-chambered outcomes. These diagnostics are aquarium lit, my son and husband and I quiet and aglow as fish, while the sonographer tries to distract us from the ocean of the heart's anatomy. I keep a single room inside me where I let myself think about drowning, sink, run drills for what ifs. What if this is the tidal wave, the flash flood, the specialist? Motherhood is an everyday sandbagging of the life, the house, the heart, the body. You watch the clock tick. Our son's eyes stay fixed on me. I watch his valves on screen relax and squeeze, heartbeat half sick, suspended between dread and marble. Okay, the next poem I'm going to read is a blend of cento and collage from lines and phrases of Jane Austen's Persuasion, because that is one of the things that I did to amuse myself during the pandemic was read everything that I had lying around the house. And one of the things was Persuasion. And I actually, I typed out the lines, I printed them out, I cut them and glued them at my table, like a hostage note style. It was very exciting. So this is one of the resulting poems. While drowning, we might say, one does not love a place less for having suffered in it. We cannot help ourselves. We are rehearsing our survival. The past is no beautifier, only a theater of rooms. You need not covet it. It does not breathe. None of us expect to be in smooth water all of our days. Revel, glory in the sea, blooming as ever amidst the wreck. We should go to the bottom together, full of tomorrows. The worst is over. Praise the morning. And then the last poem, it's a longer one that I'm going to close with, is a poem that started off as a cranky free write about all the things interrupting me, so that I could not get the poem that I was wanting to write written. As a little bit of background, we are a long-term finishing up our 9th year of homeschooling. I have 3 teenagers, 5 dogs, live closer to societies or civilization than maybe I would like to some days. So my husband also works part-time from home sometimes. So it can be noisy and that can make me cranky, but somehow this ended up from that start revising into a surprising gratitude practice. Praise song for adverse noise conditions. Praise the siren wail, the barking that accompanies the fire whistle that whips itself into howling for its own sake. Praise the slam of car doors, the passing traffic space. Praise the neighborhood, the neighbors' toddler's outside voice, his practice hellos. Praise the full cacophony of outside play. Even the sidewalk chalk skip squeal. Even the basketball bounced again and again. Praise the tumbling hoofbeats of sneakers in the dryer, my son's gallop down the stairs. Praise the toilet running still again. Praise the drawer shuts rattle, spoon clatter in the silverware tray, the clink of stacking plates, the coffee maker percolating, ding of the microwave. Praise the constant dialogue poured over the days, talking. Even the squabbling, even my daughter's BuzzFeed quiz result debates, my son's many recountings, the hockey play-by-plays. Praise even the Minecraft zombie sound effects. Praise my husband's throat clear. Praise the housefly buzzing in the key of F. Praise the cicadas, the hydrangeas blown against the bathroom window. Praise the wind chimes, the whisper press of pages in my hand. The poem, however it descends. Let's call it music, all of it. Praise my daughter's pencil, drawing rain, the actual, sometimes incessant rain. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Violeta. That was amazing. All right. And also, I meant to mention, if you want to give our readers some love in the chat, you can definitely do that. Mention some lines you like or moments you like or images you like. Totally go for it. All right. So next, Amanda Ganus is going to introduce our next reader.
Yes. Okay. So our first reader is going to be Megan Falley. Megan is a queer femme writer who has been living as a full-time touring spoken word poet, author, and teaching artist since her first of 3 full-length poetry collections was published in 2012. Her most recent collection, Drive Here and Devastate Me, was heralded by Autostraddle as a love letter to the queer community. In 2019, Falley co-wrote How Poetry Can Change Your Heart with her partner, poet Andrea Gibson, as a part of Chronicle Books' acclaimed How series. Her chapbook, Bad Girls, Honey, was the winner of the 2015 Tired Hearts Chapbook Prize. Though Falley cut her teeth as a competitive slam poet and is both a National Poetry Slam and Women of the World Poetry Slam finalist, she recently began kicking free of the confines of stanza and running wild in the meadows of prose. Since transitioning to memoir, Falley was selected as the first place winner for the Tom Howard John H. Reed Essay Prize and the runner-up for Phoebe Journal's 50th Anniversary Prize in Nonfiction. Throughout the pandemic, Falley has taught over 600 students online in her virtual workshop, Poems That Don't Suck. She lives in Colorado with the loves of her life, her partner, and 3 tiny rescue dogs. She's rooting for you.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. That all sounds so long when you say it out loud. Oh, okay, I'm spotlighted, great. So I'm so glad to be here, and Violeta, those poems are just so stunning. Thank you for sharing them. I've been working on a memoir for the last 3 years. Mostly it's about my body and the 5 summers I spent at a children's co-ed weight loss camp, and that's impact on me. But more than that, it's about how When we don't heal an initial wound, we can kind of build an entire personality around it, and every piece of us might intersect with it until we can heal it. And I wanted to write about a lot of, the shitty relationships with boys I had before I realized how gay I was, but I didn't want them to take up a lot of time in the manuscript. So what I'm about to read right now is titled A History of Boys Abridged. Because of the time limit, it's unfortunately more abridged. And by unfortunately, I mean there were more. So I'll just go on and read you a little bit. A History of Boys Abridged. He should play guitar. That's all you want. The possibility of some skinny boy writing you into a song, whining it into a microphone, and another girl knowing it was written for you. That's all you ever wanted, to make a prettier girl jealous. You listen to sad boys lament and ignite your eyeliner pencil with a Bic before smudging it along your tight line, eyes looking slightly bruised. You worship lanky, greasy bassists who wear all black, whose blacks are blacker than yours. Boys whose heroes killed themselves or are suspected to have been killed by their women. You hang the front man of a band called Bright Eyes in your locker. Each time you twist its combination and swing open its red door, his picture stares down at you, as if about to kiss your forehead absent-mindedly, too busy chewing out a lyric in his head to remember to text you later. That's the kind of love you imagine for yourself. Your romances have been reserved for AOL, where your body can be forgotten. Behind a screen, they can reinvent you. You are the ventriloquist, casting your voice into whoever they might imagine on the other end of the internet, some pretty dummy. You type all night with boys who already have girlfriends, who promise to meet you at the mall and never show. Boys with beepers you page with your phone number and then 143, and when they don't answer, 696969, and when they still don't answer, 911, 911, 911. Even in an emergency, they do not rescue you. So you skip school the next day, the next week, faking strep throat or somehow actually catching it. By the time you are a senior, you've tested positive for strep 11 times. Your tonsils ripped raw from screaming, "Look at me," but not being heard. A girl trapped under glass. You're 15 now, and looking for love in the backs of windowless vans, the path behind your house, gravel indents in your knees, praying at the altar of men, the way Catholics kneel before Jesus on grains of rice when guilty, begging to be saved. You are a wet nurse for these boys, letting them milk you dry, but they will never, ever be yours. You meet Chris in a basement, high school, junior year. His shirt says, "Arrest me, I'm a skateboarder." You're drunk, so you say something like, "If only I had handcuffs." You know how to get attention now, not with your body. It's your words that make you pretty. Chris starts talking about his favorite band, The Used, asks if you know any of their songs. You sing to him in that blue lit room, keg kicked in the corner. He lets you finish the hook, but then undermines you. I mean any songs that aren't on MTV. Before you walk away, you spit, "Fuck you," the kind of thing that makes him follow, pretending you don't need him to. By the next week, you're making out in the mall on the display beds at Sears, and you think his lips are laced with something like LSD. You feel all technicolor there on the memory foam mattress, which absorbs the shape of your bodies. When you rise, the imprint of the two of you is emblazoned on the bed, and you wish you had a camera. Proof. Poof, he's gone. Girls don't have to wait by the phone anymore now that you can take your phone anywhere. A little computer in your pocket can be many things depending on who does or does not make it ring, a Valentine, a paperweight, a grenade. He's a year older, graduating. You write something hot and devastating in his yearbook. You don't remember what you write, but that is your signature, hot and devastating. You just won a statewide award for an essay you wrote about your religion. Your religion, you said, is summer. The waves, your sanctuary, rosary beads of Atlantic Ocean sweat. You got money for it. A scholarship for your romance and nostalgia, your obsession with Coney Island. The way you work metaphor in your mouth like tying a cherry stem with your tongue to prove you're a good kisser. Poof, he's back and you don't ask questions. You're in CVS and he has a credit card and a swipe of mischief on his face. He buys you a blow-up pool. Poof, you're at a gas station inflating it with 25-cent air. Poof, you're running across the highway carrying the pool above your heads like an Egyptian queen. Poof, he jumps the fence to the park that closes at dusk. He can scale it, yes, but it's your bobby pin, your girlness that picks the lock. You giggle through the dark park to the man-made lake, and he sets the inflatable pool in the water, gets in. You are worried your weight will sink it, though most of the weight is gone now. You keep forgetting that. You float together beneath an illegal moon. Poof, he's gone again. Years this time. Poof. He remembers how easy it always was with you, how you never gave him a hard time for disappearing. You don't even say, hey, stranger, that fishhook of passive aggression masquerading as flirt. Poof, you're on your roof and he's applying a sleeve's worth of temporary tattoos on your arm. Ouch, you say, as he holds the damp cloth to your shoulder and reveals your new ink, a chubby heart with a knife piercing through. You're not like other girls. You've got wit, pretending the needle is real, pretending now is forever, that it won't fade in a week or poof, another half a year. You reach out this time. You've got extra tickets to a concert in Williamsburg. Kimya Dawson, does he want to come? Of course he does. He likes free things, stuff he gets without trying. You go with him to get his first tattoo before the show, sheet music, ribboned around his ankle, some Beatles song about how nothing's going to change his world. The needle buzzes, the pain is real this time. You want to hold his hand. You distract him with a game from your childhood car rides. I'm going on a picnic and I'm bringing. You'll remember the whole list, A to Z, for too many years later. For B, he brought beer. For C, you packed a corset. For G, he bought girls, so you bought Yoko Ono to remind him how all it takes is one woman to undo an entire band of men. But you're never going to go on a picnic. Not really, are you? Love has a nasty habit of disappearing overnight. Poof. Your mom is out of town, like she always is since she got a boyfriend. Chris comes over to get too drunk with you, to sing you songs from the opposite end of your couch, making a microphone of your foot. Poof, you're in the backyard on the hammock and the world is swinging at you. Hammock and vodka are a bad combination. Poof, you're on the grass. You don't remember falling. You're a tumbleweed tangle of kissing and poof, you're in your bedroom. Poof, your clothes are off. Poof, he's inside you now. You think at least you're happy now. You think at least, poof, it's the morning and you kept your gum tucked in your cheek all night to kiss him now, fresh and clean, but you turn over and he's gone. Poof, you wanted it too much. You could smell it on you, even for all your pretending. Thank you.
Oh my goodness. Thank you, Megan. That was fabulous. All right. What an amazing reading this has been so far. I'm so excited. Okay, so next we're going to have Sunny Lee, our assistant fiction editor, introduce our next reader.
Hi, everyone. Lucy Zhang writes, codes, and watches anime. Her work has appeared in Black Warrior Review, the Cincinnati Review, West Branch, and elsewhere. Her work is included in Best Microfiction 2021 and Best Small Fictions 2021. Please welcome Lucy.
Thank you. So I'm going to be reading Swan Garden, originally published in Contrary magazine. Swan Garden. There are 6 swans in the backyard. They stay so close to the house that I can make out the jagged parts of their beaks when they aim for insects in the shallow man-made pond. I can make out the unfeathered patch of skin between eyes and bill. They wear their faces like they aren't afraid of the bareness. They have huge, heavy bodies. When they take off into the sky, wings skimming the surface of water and a thin spread of algae, it's like the air vibrates, sound waves colliding gas molecules, so that even from behind a window, I hear swooping gusts followed by silence. I like to watch the swans from the kitchen while I work. The kitchen protrudes from the house, surrounded by glass windows. I like all the natural light and the heat it lets in. The heater broke years ago, and I never bothered to get it fixed. I settle into my morning rhythm, rapid clicks of an igniting gas stove, the screech of a water kettle, the furious bubbling of soybeans boiling in water. I warm my hands with a bowl of hot soy milk, stirred with salt and topped with sesame oil. The swans preen as I let the steam warm my nose. I watch them the same way I scroll through Instagram photos of pretty girls posed in gardens or reading books or holding a forkful of steak, faces tilted to the camera so you can just see the line of their noses, background slightly blurred, a stage natural beauty. When I still swam in high school, my carpool friend and teammate Angie told me these girls were thigh gap girls. How can you tell? I had asked. You couldn't always see the girls' legs in the photos, especially when they wore those maxi skirts you could get for $20 on Amazon. I just can, Angie had said. We had broad, muscular shoulders and thighs that definitely touched, trusty limbs to propel us forward underwater, but not strong enough to kick off a body draped over you like a lead blanket. Maybe it's not a matter of strength, but a matter of shock, that anyone would want a non-thigh gap girl. A stringy and stretchy and putty girl who has to look away to avoid catching sight of her own drumstick legs. A girl who spreads them so they won't touch, and anything that comes after is what it is. I don't sleep too well these days, maybe because I don't exercise that often anymore. The more time that passes between my last swim and now, the less I want to see how my lungs have atrophied, the less I want to step in a swimsuit and offer my body to the water. The transition happens really quickly, from feeling like you could swim forever to feeling like you're drowning with every stroke, every flutter. Normally, I'll just stay in bed, staring at my phone, reading the news, trying to feel worldly and cultured, even though the news just feels like toxic gossip to me. Some people feed off that kind of thing, bad news that makes you forget about personal shortcomings, which is fine, I guess, if it makes me fall asleep. Although not tonight, so I get out of bed and walk to the kitchen to pour myself some hot water. I turn on the lights to the backyard. Instead of 6 swans preening outside, there are 6 men, all limbs and no feathers except for one. One of them still has a white wing in place of an arm, like a botched chimera experiment. I wonder if that means his mind is still partly swan too, if he thinks he can still fly with that huge body, the type of body you can only lug around on land, the type of body meant to weigh others down, trap them between sweat and ground, the sky fantasy. I lift open a window. It squeaks against the rubber seals. The men turn their heads toward the window. I can tell they're shivering under the dim lighting and dimmer moon. Will you give us some clothing? One of them asks. Will you sew us some shirts? Another asks. I don't know how to sew. I hardly know how to fix loose buttons on coats. That's why I stick with zippers and hoodies. I rub my eyes. I wonder if they have thigh gaps. They murmur among themselves as I glance at their surroundings, trying to spot traces of feathers floating on the pond. A breeze sweeps through the window into the kitchen. Even though the heater is dead, it's still far colder outside. The cold cuts into my skin. I feel like I'm being filleted, but I know bone is hard to cut. That's why so many homicide cases are of husbands who abandon their wives' bodies in rivers instead of chopping them up in suitcases. I shut the window and return to my bedroom. I wonder if they think they've been abandoned. The following morning, the swans aren't there. I'm fairly certain they'll come back. This has happened before. They disappear for a day or two, but return eventually, the full gaggle drifting in the pond, poking for food that comes from who knows where. After all, I can't expect them to live their entire lives in the backyard. A week passes. I still wake to an empty pond, now completely covered by algae and cyanobacteria. I take a breath. Thank you.
Oh, Lucy, thank you so much for that. That was amazing. Wow. Yeah, I love that. All right, so next we're going to hear from another So to Speak reader. So Amanda will introduce our next reader.
Yes, next up is Sean Tyler. Sean is originally from Tulsa, Oklahoma, and still considers that her hometown. She is currently pursuing an MFA in painting and drawing at the University of Iowa. She splits her time between teaching and making and showing art. Her work has been on display widely in Oklahoma, as well as New York, Seattle, Italy, and others. Tyler does a mixture of fiber art, particularly embroidery, with painting and occasionally printmaking and photograms. There is a long history of depicting women in art, and most of it is reductive. As a bisexual woman in traditional art and academic spaces, Tyler is exhausted with the traditional objectified images of women and aims to create collaborative alternatives.
Hey, thank you so much. Yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and share a screen so people can see some images. Sorry, one sec. Cool. Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm in really good company. Thank you guys for having me come talk for a minute. But yeah, I'm Sean. I am a visual artist. This is the piece that's actually in So to Speak. I'm really proud of this one. This is from a series of work I've made that's actually based on selfies that people have sent me, and then also some of my own as well. But there's like a very long history of men, especially male artists, drawing women and that being like the traditional way that, you know, women were represented in art. So I've been working to kind of create something that's a little bit different. So I've been wanting to use pictures that people have sent me so that women are actually like having the chance to represent themselves and decide like how they would like to be seen. And I really love this series because I've gotten such a huge range of portrayals. This is actually the first one that I did and the most recent one that I did. And it's the same model who's a really dear friend of mine. But I think it just really represents like kind of that range of like what you'd call maybe like a thirst trap or something that's meant to be attractive, or like even a little bit sensual, but like in a way that like you're deciding that that's what you want and like projecting that. And then also the way that we use selfies to kind of create an image for ourselves or like a personal style. But yeah, so these works are all actually like life size. So they are all iPhone size, since that's the device I use. But I've been trying to capture like little bits of like digital life and how we kind of relate to our phones and how that shapes like our opinions of ourselves and each other. So you can kind of see like I have a little bit of like meta text. So I really like this one with the Snapchat text. And just for like a peek behind the curtain, these are kind of how those images start. So you can see like them being built up with embroidery. And fiber arts are really important to my practice, not only because I actually really love working with embroidery and sewing and stitching, but also because embroidery in the Western world has like a history of being like a feminine thing. So being treated like a handicraft or a hobby, instead of being taken seriously as like a real artistic medium, scare quotes around real. Because traditionally women did it and it was at home. And so it was less respectable than going to a studio and oil painting. So I really want to bring that back. And there's a lot of like wonderful fiber artists who are doing very, very similar things. So I'm fortunate to live in a time where it's a really great time to be a craft artist. But just for like a sense of scale, this phone was actually in a miniature gallery in Seattle. So we were showing it as if it was, I think the scale was 1/12. So it was as if it was tall. So I like to imagine them in different ways and kind of play with space as well. But yeah, and this is another one that was done at the same time as Sean and Casey. And it's me and my partner. And kind of thinking about how phones shape relationships and distance. This was done at the height of COVID when we were very far away from each other. So thinking about like how phones enable connection and interaction as well as like that sense of distance. So yeah, I'm just kind of thinking about a lot of contrast between what it means to do something that's very slow and very old fashioned and very handmade compared to like the very slick, smooth like digital world that we're all kind of used to. But yeah, I'll just go back. But yeah, I love this one and the contrast of like two very different pieces. Like one photo is very casual, one's a little bit more posed and staged. And it was also really important that I included myself in this series because this is like such a collaborative project. I wanted it to be, you know, I wanted to be a part of that. And I also wanted it to be really clear that like I think that this is like a good thing to do. And I would also never ask my models to do anything that I wasn't willing to do. So yeah, that's where all of that came from.
Wonderful. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that, Sean. That's so amazing to get some insight into the artistic process. So thank you for sharing your images and some of the thoughts behind them. Amazing. So we've heard some amazing art as well as some readings as well. So we're going to take a very short break, just about 5 minutes for everyone to kind of stretch your legs and do whatever you need to do, and then we will be back in about 5 minutes to continue with the reading. So hang tight and we'll continue in about 5. All right, welcome back, everyone. Hopefully you all got a stretch. So we're going to continue with our reading. So next we're going to hear from another Peatsmoke contributor. So I will ask our editor, Bess Cooley, to introduce our next reader.
All right. Brooke Schifano is a writer and educator currently based in Greenville, South Carolina, where she splits her time between a tabby cat and a vining pothos. Her recent poetry and nonfiction can be found in Salt Hill, Sonora Review, Salamander, and elsewhere. Please welcome Brooke Schifano.
Wow, I forgot to unmute. It's like I've never done this. Hello. Thank you so much for including me in this event. Thank you, Bess and Wendy and everyone at So to Speak. It's so great to be in such good company of writers and artists. I'm going to start with something very on theme. A little pandemic anxiety poem. It's actually the one published in Peatsmoke. And this one is called Greenville, South Carolina. Look, when the heron flew over the bridge and I felt its big wing a foot from my face, I had to check my phone to see what it meant. I don't know how to start a sourdough loaf any more than I can shoot my dinner. But when I run out of another day staring at the river, I think to myself I'd like to wind through the woods and follow my loose threads home until I die a pile of yarn under a pine, a river washing away its sides. But by the time I turn the key in the lock, I'm bored of tomorrow. The heron will appear when you are in between, standing still at the precipice of change. Long legs spindle either side of the river's edge, a cartographer's compass measuring the split. Look, it's been a year trapped in the trees, set up camp in a house with no roots, thin carpet, old stove, wound a path each morning along a lazy river, tried to keep it together, but I unspooled just the same. Watched the current lap the rock's face, the stick knock at the bend until it broke. Looked up and named birds I couldn't call. Saw nothing worth reporting. Wrote it all down on rips of paper, tossed them to the wind, dogwood petals on a late spring breeze. The great blue heron usually stands still at the shoreline, needs the land as much as the water. Look, I'd love to be the type of person to go out without a hat in the middle of a summer storm. But once halfway home, the sky caved, collapsed roof of a living room blanket fort, and everything swam. Had to stop under a shelter to sit out the water, perched on a picnic table without a plate, watched the empty grill become a fountain, watched the puddle become a lake, and river its way back to the stream. Couldn't stop watching. Any land, any water. As happy to touch down along the opened coast as it is a backyard pond. Look, sometimes I think I could live under the sky, be watered and dried and not need a hot shower. By the river, you wonder why anybody goes inside. And then you remember hot tea from the kettle, warm blanket on the couch. Most days, it's impossible to fathom I'm made of the same stuff as the clouds. I try to stand up straight and breathe deep and remember I'm water, but I always end up with the same dirt on my shoes, footprints through the living room. Fresh and saltwater marshes, mangrove swamps, flooded meadows, lake edges, shorelines. Here is as good as any other place. In the popcorn ceiling, you can count the stars. On the living room floor, if I close my eyes, I can stretch my limbs to the four corners of the universe until the cat licks my cheek and the carpet digs patterns down my back. I can sleep in knots and wake with the light, leave all the dishes in the sink. The heron landed by the water, perched at the edge. When I split, Right along the shoreline, I made a mess of it, scattered bones and a heap of skin, blood everywhere. Finally, liquid enough to wash into the stream and lift with the sun, cloud the horizon as you drive the long way home. And now to continue with the theme, more anxiety poems. How to set intentions, according to experts, asterisk. After Love Crown by Paul Celan. Now in the morning, now in the mirror, it is Sunday. It is a list of a long ways to go. Eyelid crease, acne crater, heavy fold. Now in the mirror, it is a list of thick, dark hairs passing time across my chin. What I want, what I need. Damp morning in an unfinished suburb. I let time nibble checks from the boxes. Autumn walk. I run out of asphalt, stumble through a blank field. A field hopped with grasshoppers, caterpillar tractors wet from last night's rain. Jacket still hung to dry over the living room chair. Harrington Estates, October 10th. Forests are easy. Pick a tree, follow the roots to the water. Watch the current until you can't help but break. In the suburb, I run the blocks. I try to keep up with the circling birds. Turkey vulture, sometimes a hawk. Backhoes crack their necks, bury their jaws in red dirt. Like herons plunging their beaks in deep water, they come up with their mouths full. Every so often, someone comes in a city truck and plants a new street sign. Willow Lane is 10 feet of concrete and a row of flagged sticks through a bald red field. I follow the breeze down the line of pink plastic flags, stop to watch the backhoe swallowing its dinner whole. And then I have one more. It's also an anxiety poem, but a historical anxiety poem. Some families bury their dead, but my grandma flips through obituaries over breakfast, touches the photos of those she knows and those she might have, runs a finger down the crease, tucks the paper under eggs and toast. She takes death 2 scoops with her coffee, stirs it into the story like any other detail. The shape of a neck, the color of a sky, the way he got up to start the day and never finished. Over spaghetti, she says, remember when they had to stop the dinner to pop the meatball from his throat? She ladles sauce and we fill our mouths, work our jaws to the quick. I'll skip right to the lesson. Death is just another thing to live through. But she'd never tell it like that. The little boy, her neighbor's brother, who climbed into the wooden chest for a game of hide and seek, how they couldn't find him fast enough. His small hands fumbling for the latch. Once, too drunk to work the bathroom door at a party, I thought I was going to die like him, locked in and running out of air. Thought of what they'd seen when they lifted the lid. At the bar, I quiet the table to tell it, a story of my own, to hands squeezing citrus into bubbles, balancing straws to lips. The one about the serial killer who laid his mother's head on a platter, who told the women he'd get them home safe and drove them to the woods instead. I chew lemons to the rind and walk home thinking of my mother, of what I haven't learned, how death is something people live through. How my uncle wasn't even 20 when the tow truck ran a light and caught him without a helmet. How long the rest of his years were, stuck in a bed with no words, blurred edge of a different life. How my grandmother had to wake the next morning, crack eggs for breakfast. How death becomes a lesson. One summer I come in from the heat and tell grandma I'm dying. I crawl toward the kitchen, show her my best imitation of a person on the verge of certain death who can only be saved by immediate consumption of water, and she ignores it. Tells me her aunt died stooped over weeds in the garden. Do I know that? So now she never stoops too low, and she always stops when the sun burns too hot on her shoulders. I nod, but her words tumble and thud with the ice in the machine, get lost in the noise. That, she says, is how you stay alive. Thanks.
Oh, thank you so much for that, Brooke. Love some anxiety poems. That was awesome. All right, fantastic. Okay, so we've got our next reader from So to Speak. So Amanda.
All right. So next we have Monika Gupta. She is an alum of 10 House and One Story Workshops, and she's a former vice president of marketing at a cybersecurity startup. Her work has been featured in the New York Times Modern Love at 13 project, and her short story Baby Arjun won first prize in So to Speak's 2022 fiction contest and is a finalist in Screencraft's cinematic short story competition. She is currently working on a novel exploring identity, belonging, and cross-generational prejudices centered around a Midwestern South Asian community. She can be found at Twitter at Gupta Monika.
Thank you. Thank you, So to Speak and Peatsmoke Journal, for hosting this reading. Thank you to everyone for listening to my work. I'll be reading the opening pages of an abridged version of my short story, which is in the current issue of So to Speak. Baby Arjun. Be there in half an hour. Pari read the message from Rachel several times. After graduating from their Master of Arts program, they had unintentionally followed each other to Colorado, where their husbands bonded over home renovations and artisan coffee, making it possible to stay friends over the years. Now Rachel wanted to meet Pari's newborn son, Arjun. 30 minutes was enough time to clean the kitchen, change out of her sweats, brush her hair, and apply a pinch of makeup. But it wasn't enough time to find herself a baby. Opening her Instagram again, she checked the likes on her last post. The dark green crochet blanket she'd laid out so carefully, splayed along the edges of the crib, the sides spread thin to allow the afternoon's last rays of sunshine to seep through the tiny holes. Made this to keep my sweet Arjun cozy, she had written, as a caption along with the hashtags, homemade and proud mama. Beautiful, wrote a woman she'd played soccer with in an adult league last year. Amazing, how did you find the time? Wrote an acquaintance with 2 kids of her own. And now, 4 months since they'd played baby trivia and snacked on cupcakes at Pari's baby shower, Rachel's comment posted, I'm in the neighborhood and want to meet Arjun. I'll text you. Minutes later, as promised, a follow-up text read, be there in half an hour. I'm not taking no for an answer. For so long, Pari had dreamt of this very moment. When she had met her friends' babies, she'd lingered over their tiny fingers and toes, wondering when it would be her turn. After huddling in a windowless conference room to celebrate her 3rd coworker baby shower in a month, Pari had found herself done with waiting. Initially, her husband, Nadeem, had been hesitant, though her persistence had finally paid off. We can try it, Nadeem had agreed, using the same response he'd given the week before when they ordered from a Mediterranean restaurant with mediocre Yelp reviews that had opened on the east side of town. Over the course of 2 years, first trying naturally, then through increasingly invasive and expensive interventions, Nadeem had appeared too unaffected each time they found out they weren't pregnant. He'd skipped multiple doctor appointments for work and slept peacefully while she spent long nights researching new methods to overcome infertility. When the doctor's office called to tell them IVF had worked, the news provided confirmation of what had been brewing all along. Nadeem finally admitted he didn't want to be a father. Within weeks, they both knew it would be better if they separated. I can't believe you left. At least you got alimony, her friends had said. I'm going to be a mom, Pari had said, trying to keep her voice from breaking. I'll be fine. And she was, or so people thought, even 9 months later after the divorce papers had been quietly filed and the baby's due date had passed. For a while, she'd bought herself time, layering on excuses and delayed responses that had deterred visitors from her home. When friends inquired why there were no pictures of Arjun online, her response had been simple, for it was now popular in social settings to pretend to value privacy. I don't want his picture all over social media, Pari had responded. Who knows where it could end up? But now, Her privacy had run out. 7th bullet point, 12 size serif font in slate gray. Chance of miscarriage for women that undergo IVF is 22%. Pari had read the stat multiple times, but it wasn't until the doctor offered the percentage as a strange consolation that she remembered the ivory pamphlet in her kitchen drawer. She was almost 12 weeks into her hard-earned pregnancy. In mere seconds, the title she had worked years for had been stripped away. She and Arjun had discussed music, how to make paneer, and witnessed Virginia bluebells and sedums blooming in the backyard. Pari lay exposed on the cold examination table in a pale blue gown. The doctor repeated her apology, along with an incorrect pronunciation of Pari. You have more frozen eggs when you're ready to try again, the doctor reminded her, pulling off her latex gloves, one leg pushing down on the trash can's foot pedal. Try again. After 4 rounds of IUI and a round of IVF, hadn't she tried hard enough? Besides, Nadim was gone. She didn't have a sperm anymore. After her miscarriage, Pari spent months slumped on her couch. Pregnant women haunted Pari. They visited her at night, their bellies round and full and faces aglow, laughing and pointing at her as she walked naked down the street, her flat stomach repulsive near their fertile bodies. During the day, she replayed her pregnancy in her head. It's not your fault, the doctor had said, but Pari felt that it must be. Had she eaten too many brownies? Had the Butler Gulch hike been too strenuous? She'd kept asking for answers, but the doctor had only offered apologies and statistics. Pari hadn't been able to get herself to share the loss with anyone yet, other than with her mom in India. The next day, after a restless night of sleep, Pari walked into the baby room at the end of the hall, partially developed just like Arjun. It had once been Nadim's study, and now the crib, which she had spent weeks researching for the safest model on the market, was unassembled in an open cardboard box. The front side had a picture of a smiling, straight-haired blonde woman watching her sleeping newborn. The bookshelf in the study was empty, minus a few stuffed animals that Pari had played with as a child. And what should she do now? What was this room to become? Gazing around the room, she noticed 2 stubborn faded caramel spots on the carpet, drops that had escaped an overflowing cup of coffee when she had chased after Nadim the morning before he left for good. But why don't you want a baby? She'd asked, but no answer he'd given had made any sense to her. At that moment, she promised to never let Arjun down the way his father had. I have to be there for my baby, Pari thought, as she looked around the room at the unfinished walls. She wet her paintbrush before dipping it into mortar black paint, her hand steady as she finished the zebra's stripes. Next, she finished the giraffe's tails and the antelope's horns. She sketched a sunrise on one side and a sunset on the opposite wall, and drew each blade of grass with bright green paint. A scatter plot of tiny dots of dew formed a lush, moist ground for animals to prance on. It felt good, finally, to do something, anything, for Arjun. 3 weeks later, Pari stood back and gazed upon her finished masterpiece. The baby room walls had been transformed. Grabbing her phone, she clicked a quick photo. Arjun's room, she captioned, quickly hitting the plus sign to post it on Instagram. The post was complete so that it was done almost before she realized it. What did I just do? But by then, it was already too late. And then there they were, 50 likes in 5 minutes, 60, 70, 100. She watched breathlessly as likes rolled in, scrolling through words of support and encouragement. Some of the comments were tinged with jealousy, but they all confirmed what she wanted to hear. She was still a mom. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that, Monika. It was so great to hear that story. Oh my goodness. All right, so we have one final reader for the night, and it's from Peatsmoke. Sunny, if you could introduce our final reader.
Yes. Jo Saleska Lange lives and writes in St. Louis, Missouri. She received her MA in literature with an emphasis in rhetoric and composition from the University of Missouri-Columbia and works as an academic writing coach and freelance dissertation editor. She is currently pursuing an MFA in fiction from the University of Missouri, St. Louis. Please welcome Jo.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Thank you to Wendy and Sunny and Bess and Amanda for hosting this. I feel really thankful and also a little unworthy to be reading among all these really accomplished writers. But so I'm in my final semester of my MFA, and my thesis project is a collection of short stories, and all of them kind of contain elements of fairy tale. And so I'm going to read from the title story in the collection, and I'm just going to read the first few pages. And the story is called Beasts Unfed. Charlotte is the first to see the wolves, a message encoded in her skin. She sits in the bathroom sink, cold porcelain under her thighs, and leans toward the mirror to examine the constellations of acne across her chest. She sees a flaming oak tree, a sinking ship, a broken bridge. But no, none of those seem quite right. Most astrologers require the night sky to divine the future, but Charlotte only needs a good view of her own adolescent flesh, her maroon galaxies. A bear, she thinks, or a cougar, something predatory, something with teeth. The 4 members of the Winkler family are at a cabin in the woods for their summer vacation. The place is small and isolated and made of pine siding and pine shingles, pine paneled walls and ceilings, solid pine doors with hardened drips of amber sap. Patricia can't help but notice the faces in the knots of pine, faces with wonky eyes and O-shaped mouths, frightened faces, surprised faces, pained faces, thousands of faces, but no human souls, only trees and trees and trees for miles. There is at least a lovely picture window in the living room to let in the sunlight. But if it had been up to Patricia, they'd be on a cruise ship in the Bahamas. She'd be tanning her legs and drinking pina coladas served on silver platters. She had run all the numbers against their budget, had found a way to make it work, but Jim had found a better deal. A cousin had offered to rent out his hunting cabin at half the normal rate. What our family needs, Jim told Patricia, is to unplug from everything, to focus on one another for once. What Jim really wanted, Patricia knew, was a quiet place to get started on his novel. He had read an old paperback thriller over the holidays and got it into his head that writing novels wasn't so hard. Jim had a zillion ideas for a novel. He just needed the time to sit down and write. So of course, here they are. Patricia knocks hard on the bathroom door. Charlotte, get out of there, she says. Your brother is going to wet himself. T-Bone has one hand cupped tight around his crotch while he spins off the couch in the living room. He hates to be interrupted while playing, especially to pee. He is a helicopter on a rescue mission to save the planet from the beast whose head hangs above the stone fireplace. T-Bone is wearing nothing but a pair of dinosaur underwear. His clothes itch him all over, and why should he have to wear clothes anyway? In the bathroom, Charlotte hears her mother knock again, hears the jangle of the locked doorknob. She finds ignoring her mother immensely satisfying. The only thing Patricia hates more than contrition is silence. Charlotte leans closer to the mirror, traces patterns in her acne with the tip of her finger. Patricia's knuckles redden against the solidness of the bathroom door. If you're not out in 5 seconds, she says, so help me. But Patricia can't think of a single threat. Threats only work when you know certain fundamentals about a person, what they love, what frightens them. And her daughter Charlotte has long become a stranger. She is a puzzle with no solution, a lockbox with no key. Patricia feels the faces in the walls pressing in, watching. Is it real, Mommy? In the living room, T-Bone is staring up at the taxidermed wolf head that hangs above the fireplace. The wolf is frozen in a snarl, the skin of its muzzle pulled back to show its teeth, its golden glass eyes wide and wild. It's barbaric, Patricia had said when they'd arrived at the cabin. She had suggested they drape a sheet over it, but Jim had disagreed. It adds to the charm of the place, he'd said. Of course it's not real, baby, says Patricia. But T-Bone can see from the sheen of its fur and the black of its nose that his mother is lying. He bounces in place, both hands between his legs. Come on, T-Bone, says Patricia. You'll have to pee outside. No, says T-Bone, I will not. He throws himself to the floor, curls his legs into his chest. Patricia bends to scoop T-Bone into her arms and he giggles. He is still light enough that she can cradle him like a baby. Too light, according to his pediatrician. He is all knees and elbows, her sweet Titus, her delicate piece of glass. She's tried everything, but he never gains weight, hardly touches anything she cooks. She carries him out the back door and sets him in the grass. The backyard is an oval clearing rimmed by tall, mossy trees that go on and on. The day is warm and cloudy, a little humid. The forest is eerily still, like the lull between a clock's ticking. Patricia has never been much for the outdoors. She pulls T-Bone by the hand to a tree at the edge of the yard. Go right here, she says. Outside? Asks T-Bone. Yes, my love, right here. On the tree? T-Bone laughs, his entire body shaking. He's never heard anything so funny. He holds his hands between his legs to keep from wetting himself, but it's too late. He feels a gush of heat in his underwear, warm liquid down his thighs. He looks up at his mother, horrified. But Patricia isn't looking at T-Bone. She sees something in the woods, a white blur of movement, a slinking between trees. The animal is too white to be a deer, much too large for a raccoon or stray dog. And then they see the yellow orb eyes fixed on them, two sharp ears flicked in their direction, a low growl, a set of teeth bared. And I'll stop right there.
Thank you so much for that, Jo. Amazing. Oh, I'm so excited to know what happens next. All right, Amanda, you want to take us out?
Yeah, wow. Thank you all for reading and everybody else for coming. I swear every time we do one of these, it just gets better and better. And I love getting to hear work that I already know read out loud and to hear new things. It's really amazing. Before we go, I just want to let all of you know that both So to Speak and Peatsmoke are open for submissions. So send in anything you have. We'd love to read it, to see it. And if you do happen to be in Philadelphia at AWP, So to Speak is there, and we'd love to see you come by the book fair. Yeah, thank you all for coming. We are going to verify over the next couple of days copyright information with all of the readers. And if we're able to, we will share this recording with all of you soon. Yeah, good night, everybody.